dear Mr. Prime Minister Abazovic, Deputy Prime Minister of North Macedonia, ministers here from Montenegro and the region, dear Mr. McCarthy, Ambassador Reinke, thank you for your very inspiring speech. Mr. Lajčák and Sir Peach, participants, ladies and gentlemen from across the region and beyond. I'd like to start by thanking the International Republican Institute for the invitation, as well as the opportunity to join this panel, to join all of you, as well as address you at a time when our continent, Europe, the world, as well as the region here, face some of the most challenging times. The morning of February 24th, 2022 has changed the course of our modern history forever and has shaken our societies in unimaginable ways. The people of the Republic of Kosovo, but also so many around this region, understand all too well the value of freedom of democracy. We have faced the opposite of democracy. We have been victims of genocidal wars. And now, as sovereignty, freedom, democratic values, the rules-based order, alliances, and multilateralism are simultaneously under threat, we understand once more their indispensable significance. Russia's barbaric and unprovoked war in Ukraine is redefining the future of Europe, but not only. It is evaluating the strength and perseverance of our alliances. It is helping the world realize once again what was already so clear to many of us, that we should never take freedom and democracy for granted. Despite the immense progress that we have made as a country, and indeed as a region, today we are all reminded that threats to peace and security are constant as well as active. Concerns of destabilization beyond the Ukrainian borders persist because there are continuous attempts by Russia, mainly through its proxies, to destabilize the Western Balkans. Everyday traces of these attempts can be found in Kosovo, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as in Montenegro, with the ongoing efforts by our neighbor Serbia to create tensions, instrumentalize minority communities, fake attacks against them, use propaganda as well as disinformation, and as a result, threat the very hard-earned peace and stability in our region. In the face of these developments, the EU course of action must be clear, timely, as well as bold. Our region and our people need assurances as far as the integration perspective is concerned. We need action. We need concrete and immediate action, and not just words, as we've heard so far. We need clarity and a concrete roadmap forward. The countries of our region, except for one, if I may add, have made their vision for the future extremely clear. We aim EU membership because we believe in the values on which the EU was founded. We see the European Union, as well as NATO, as values-based systems, not just as cash machines or military machines. We aim there because of the values that they represent and because we share the exact same values. In the case of the Republic of Kosovo, we have never looked elsewhere. The EU values are embodied in the very DNA of our society, and the EU integration path serves as the roadmap, both for our institutional development as well as the everyday governance. We must be reminded that the dragging of the EU accession process for the countries of our region will only create more space and more fertile ground for malign actors to increase their presence as well as their influence in the region. We must not close our eyes as we face the obvious. This is not just a war of Russia against Ukraine. This is a direct threat against the entire security architecture of our continent and a clash between the values of democracies on one hand with the sick hegemonic ambitions of aggressors in the other. It is also a direct attempt to attack and to undermine everything that the transatlantic alliance has built throughout history. There is no greater injustice than seeing these crimes being committed on European soil once again. against innocent people in an unprovoked war. The war in Kosovo took place just over 2 decades ago. So the people that I represent today do not only just sympathize with Ukrainians, we genuinely understand their struggle, their pain, their sacrifice, as well as their bravery. Kosovo has immediately and fully aligned its sanctions against Russia with the European Union, the United States, as well as democratic countries around the world. We also opened our doors for refugees and are hosting journalists, just as many of you did in the late 90s for the people of my country. And we are ready to give back and do more as needed. While the war in Ukraine has brought the democratic world together in response against Russia, unfortunately, our neighbor Serbia, an EU candidate country, not only did not impose sanctions, but it continues to remain a safe haven for Russian businesses, which is then serving as an oxygen for the war in Ukraine. It has even further deepened its ties with Putin. They have exponentially expanded the political, economic, as well as the political cooperation, while the rest of the democratic world is doing the exact opposite. We cannot afford to pretend that we are not understanding the obvious. We must learn from history. And it is history that has proven to all of us that appeasement of autocrats today only emboldens them tomorrow. It is history that has warned us time and time again that concessions to tyrants are never temporary, and they certainly never bring lasting peace. Also, the so-called face-saving policy, which we in the Balkans are all too familiar with, should stop. It must stop. It must stop because it further encourages the bully. It must stop because it further helps the tyrant and the autocrat. It must stop because it allows history revisionism. It must stop because it creates a moral equivalency between the aggressor and the victim. And it must stop because that's the only way for us democracies to not just stand up to, but also to prevail over the hegemonic and the imperialist intentions of tyrants and autocrats. We must also draw lessons from the war in Ukraine to make it clear to everyone that the only guarantee for the long-lasting peace and prosperity in our region is the Euro-Atlantic membership of all aspiring countries. That's why an accelerated membership to NATO for Kosovo and Bosnia-Herzegovina, as well as membership to the European Union for all those that are doing their homework and truly believing, adhering to, and fully aligning with the European Union values and decisions, is extremely important, and it should be reaffirmed in the upcoming NATO summit in Spain, as well as the Council of the EU meeting in June. Kosovo's aspirations to become a member of NATO, starting with a partnership for peace, are not just a political statement. We see membership in NATO through the security lens, and we call on everyone to do the same in the light of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We see membership in NATO as an unequivocal guarantee on Kosovo's statehood, permanence, safety, as well as security and stability in the entire region. And we ultimately see NATO membership as the only guarantor for long-lasting and sustainable peace in the region. And that's why it's so indispensable, and that's why now is the time. Our region also needs stronger bonds, clear frameworks for cooperation, and a commitment to further enhance existing alliances, as well as foster new ones built on shared values. However, let me be very clear on one point, which I wasn't really planning to add in this speech, but in the light of the morning press conference, I have to. There can only be an open Balkan with open democracies, with all 6 open democracies, with open democracies that respect each other, recognize each other, and treat each other based on an equal footing principle, as well as the principle of all inclusiveness. There can only be an open Balkan among equals. As long as one of us doesn't recognize the other, there can be no treatment among equals. That is not the open Balkan that we have been introduced to. In fact, the one that we have been introduced to as the Republic of Kosovo is one that doesn't treat our country as among equals. And that is why we strongly believe that the Berlin process, with the common regional market at the center of it, is the only way forward, to which we fully commit and look forward to working with all of the other countries in the Western Balkans to be successful on. And speaking of dialogue, the dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia has a chance to set a good example. That's why Kosovo's institutions have shown their full commitment to this process. Our institutions are committed to a principled dialogue that is just and treats both parties equally, and that does not undermine our country's sovereignty, independence, and its constitutional order. A dialogue that is centered on mutual recognition is extremely important to be understood by all. Only a dialogue based on these premises does stand a chance to ultimately help us unlock the full potential of the regional cooperation in the Western Balkans altogether. Dear participants, as the conversations will unfold in the coming hours in this summit, the fact of a changing political and security dynamics in the Western Balkans will become clearer by the hour. We will need continuous dialogue, clear ambition, as well as focused action. The American political figure, activist, and the former First Lady of the United States, Eleanor Roosevelt, famously said, "It isn't enough to talk about peace. One must believe in it. And it isn't enough to believe in it. One must work on it." And in the light of the current global dynamics, I'd like to add, it isn't enough to work on it. One must preserve it. The Republic of Kosovo is ready to play its part based on these principles, as it always did, on protecting, advancing, as well as preserving peace, security, and democracy in the region and beyond. In the current situation, in the light of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I am proud to represent a country and a people that has once again chosen the right side of history. We have clearly and unequivocally chosen to stand with the people of Ukraine, because we know all too well the value of having friends, the value of having allies, the value of having those who don't close their eyes to the suffering of an oppressed people, and the value of having open doors when you are facing a genocidal war and you are faced to flee your own home. 23 years ago, May 1999, I was a refugee here in Montenegro. 23 years after, I want to repeat not only my personal gratitude, but the gratitude of all the people of Kosovo, because you had open doors as well as open hearts for all of us. You stood with us. You chose the right side of history, although it was extremely difficult back in 1999. And now, as I said, 23 years after, I'm very proud to represent a country and a people that is ready to give back to the world, that is ready to keep their doors as well as hearts open to those in need, that is ready to offer shelter for the people of Ukraine, and is ready to join each and every one of you to do our utmost to defend our very hard-earned peace, stability, independence, sovereignty, as well as, most importantly, democracy. Thank you very much.